Hi, I'm Kent.
And I'm Anna.
We're married, we make movies, and we believe that anyone in any circumstance can make a feature film.
Welcome to the Feature Filmmaker Podcast. If you want a career making movies, you're in the right place.
Hit subscribe to never miss an episode.
Let's jump right in.
Hi, welcome to today's episode. Today we're going to talk about making films together and some of the things that we've learned as a married couple and as parents and just balancing all of these priorities and making films on the same set at the same time. So this is a story that's long in the making, and we wanted to review or revisit this topic, which is something we've definitely talked about before, but just we wanted to share some of our own personal experiences, I think, and then kind of think about some overarching principles that we've picked up along the way. Because I think the last time we talked about this was at least a year ago, at least hitting this directly. And we've talked a lot about the benefits of making films, and we've talked a lot about how it's possible to make films with families. And a lot of people think that that's really, really difficult or impossible in this industry. And maybe it's an unsaid impossibility, but I think it sits in a lot of people's minds. So we just wanted to share our story. It's something that we decided, I think, upon getting married, that we were just going right into having kids, and we were just going right into making films. But we've quickly realized that was harder than it seemed. And also, we've also learned over the course of a few years that it's possible. And it's been quite the feature film, if like there's the end of the second act, Dark Night of the Soul kind of stuff, right? Where it's like, oh, they failed and they're not going to get it. We've definitely had those moments, right? Where it's like, okay, this is it. We're never doing this again. This doesn't work. It's impossible. And then we kind of, I don't know, gained some weight and didn't see anyone and never spoke to people.
What are you talking about?
We shaved our beards. We came out of hiding and saved the world. Essentially, that's what happens in Acts 3, third acts.
We shave our beards. Okay.
Yeah, what I mean, like they kind of have anyway. So yeah.
Well, so this is an interesting topic. It's definitely the question we get the most from other people who are considering having families or who are interested in the fact that we both are involved in film. Eventually, they always ask, how do you do it? How do you make films and also have kids and be married? Which is really the question that we should have asked before we tried to do it and didn't think to, but
we couldn't have answered the question if we had asked it over.
Yeah, it's true.
And that's, I think, kind of what defines a dream. You say, I'm going to do something, and someone says, how? And you go, I have no idea. Like, we don't have a plan. We don't know how we're going to do it. We're just going to kind of throw our bodies in its general direction and hope that, like, we don't die. It's like we had arranged for help, but then we'd taken over the house for film, and so there was, like, nowhere for them to go. It was bad. It was a logistical nightmare, and that led to just all sorts of problems. And so I'm just going to try, and I will fail, and then I'll try again. And it's like exponential learning in that way.
Well, yeah, and I think we went into it trying, failing miserably, and not trying again for a while. And we won't get too much into the details of the failure, but we'll say that we made our feature film together. I was directing, Kent was DPing and producing. And we cast our kids in the movie. So it really was a family ordeal. And that was very difficult. It was extremely hard on the family.
We've talked about it before.
Afterwards, we have mentioned this before, but afterwards we basically said, at first it was, let's just not do film because we were ready to give up entirely. And then eventually it turned into, okay, we'll still do film, but just not at the same time, and definitely not with our kids on set. And maybe we'll just each do our own separate projects until the kids leave home. We can take turns doing our movies.
And we can help each other on each other's projects, just not on set at the same time, because it was the main reason being is that it was so stressful. We were trying to figure out how to take care of the kids because we didn't want to neglect them. We inevitably were. I think one of the things that we decided was, I'll make the next film because you directed this last one. But it's really our film in all ways almost. But I've really wanted to direct, and so we thought, okay. So we thought it would be my turn to direct, and so I was going to prep a project. Anna was going to prep a project in the meantime to make. She'd do it after mine was done. She'd have plenty of time to prep it, and we just wouldn't be on set together. And then something kind of unexpectedly forced our hand to reconsider that. And it was somewhat recently, but we got hired to make a project. It was a commercial film, and we've talked about this as well on the podcast. But because we do a lot of pre-production and a lot of post-production, we're not just like contract directors hopping from set to set, or contract fill in the blank, DP, actor, whatever. Like, we do some of those kinds of things. We're all on a set and shoot it, or Anna will on a set and act in it, or whatever. But for the most part, if we're taking something on together, it's something we both really want to do, and we're both like highly involved in the project through pre and through production and through post. But that's rare-ish. Like, we don't do them like every week. And so what happened was we ended up needing Anna to act in a project because a change happened. Someone dropped out last minute, and we decided to try it. And Anna hadn't been acting very much up to that point, and we had sort of already sworn off doing stuff together on the same set. But we just thought, okay, well, for the same money we would have paid an actor, we'll just get someone to help watch our kids.
It wasn't a feature film, it's just a little commercial. It
Yeah.
didn't seem like a big deal. And honestly, what we were trying before that could work for a lot of people. If you are doing stuff where you are on set most of the time, like we said, pre and post production are flexible, so we're able to we usually switch off days working, and the other person watches the kids, and that works for us. We've also switched off like half days, things like that. And then when you're on production, just one person's at home taking care of the kids and the family, and one person is out working.
That's usually what we do.
And that can work great. For a lot of people, that could work just fine. But if there are projects you want to work on together, then they become sort of not an option, or not an option until later. And so, yeah, like Kent said, this happened, and they needed an actor last minute to fill in, and we thought it's just a small project, so let's get a babysitter, let's try it out. It's just one thing, and then we don't have to do it again. But it ended up being really healing and a really good experience, and we'll tell you why.
Yeah, and so ultimately, I think one of the main reasons that it was so enjoyable was logistically, it was a more prepared project than the feature, which we right into. I think that's probably the biggest thing, and we've talked about that in detail. But since we were more prepared logistically, I think it allowed us to have like a lot of conversations about the character and get prepared. Anna was really prepared, and then we showed up and we shot this thing, and there was no like memorization or dialogue or anything. It was like a silent film almost, with a commercial with narration over it. And so that just let us, I don't know, it was kind of relaxed and fun. And we shot over several days, mostly just weekends. And so it was just like a couple days, or it was really one day a week for a few weeks. And the kids basically got like a big long day to have a good time with their friends. And because we had someone who had similar aged kids watch the kids, and that worked out super good. And so we took that as like a proof of concept afterwards. And the other big thing, I think, was that there can be marital stress, and everyone has different personalities, and they're in different places maritally. If they can collaborate like this, and for a lot of our listeners, this just doesn't apply. Like, most of us don't have spouses that are in film with us, but some of us do. And I think that some people ask us, like, how do you do that? How do you both be married and work together?
We've heard tons of people say we would kill each other if we were working together all day.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
Well, and what's funny is we kind of judge people for saying that, and then I think we did find ourselves in a position where maybe that was not to that point, obviously, but like we were not feeling great. We were, and I don't really feel like it was like a huge marital thing, but it was so hard that like stress is stress, and that spills over into other parts of our lives. We know that like if we're stressed at work, sometimes we bring it home, right? And so sometimes if we're stressed at home, sometimes we bring it to work, and not always, but that can happen. And I think that for us, I think the stress overall was just so overwhelming that we thought we would not be able to work together. And that's just at least for the sake of dividing and conquering, just so that it was just reduce overall life stress. And on this one, it was actually like a reversal. It was like it was like a change. What is it? Who was it who said a change is as good as a rest?
Yeah, that was Telton Hall, my friend. His dad would say that because they would build fences together, and so it's like a really repetitive motion you do over and over again, and every once in a while, they'd switch the jobs they were doing, which kind of let them use a different arm, and his dad would say, "Change is as good as a rest," which I love because they're still working, but changing muscles, kind of changing the rhythm
Yeah.
was really nice.
Well, and it did nothing bad for our family, I think, to delegate the watching of the kids for a day a week. And I
Oh,
think
they
that
loved it. They
there
got a
was,
play date.
well, there's a lot of drama, I think, mentally that happens with a lot of parents too. I think for this, like, eh, it's like, oh, how much childcare should I or can I purchase? Like, I don't know, like you're getting help to watch your kids, and you can't delegate that job completely. No one else can be a parent to your child, and yet, like, I think that it's up to each of us to decide how much help we're going to solicit in that way. And I'm not here to prescribe what that number is, but it was something we felt good about once a week for a few weeks. That felt fine, and yeah, the kids felt great. They loved it. It was a new environment for them. Obviously, the kid's temperament and development stage might have a lot to do with if that's an option for you, or if you think that that's a good idea or not. That's obviously a parental decision. And so for us maritally as well, it's that change is as good as a rest. I think that was a rest for our kids. I think they were happy to break up the routine a little bit, spend time with new people in a new place. And for us, it was spending time with each other, working in a way that we don't usually get to, and also in a new environment. And so in that way, I think it was actually really good for the family. I think we came at life with like a new energy, looking forward to something, and also looking forward to being back together.
Mhm.
It was good, and learned a lot of lessons through it.
Yeah, I'd love to kind of break down the main things that we felt like worked this time around or that didn't work the first time around, just so that you guys, if you are attempting this or trying to find this balance, get some ideas of what worked for us or what didn't. So I'm curious if you have like specific things that you would say made it different this time than the time before.
Well, before I like to talk about that, but I'll also mention that we've done it again since the project that we've referenced where you acted in it. We did another project where you directed it. It was a
Mm.
commercial project, and I DP'd it and then did most of the work in post that you directed me through that. And that project was also a really good experience. We did a similar approach, except it didn't necessitate as much shooting. So it was really just a 2-day shoot, but we had to travel. So it was about 4 days that we left, and we had to find a place for the kids to stay. We ended up doing the exact same arrangement as before, and it was great. They looked forward to it for weeks. They loved it. We came back, and it was a lot of fun. And for the most part, I thought that was good, but I learned different things on that shoot than on this one.
Mm.
And I think that taking both of those together to answer your question, I learned it sounds silly, but I think when both of us show up as prepared to do whatever our role is, whether you were acting or directing, or whether I was directing or DPing or whatever, um, coming as prepared as possible, I think reduced a lot of stress. And so the experience really positive. So the first one was fiction. You were very prepared, I think, as an actress, especially given your short notice. It was like 2 days before you jumped into that position. And I had really prepared that particular one, but it was fiction. It was like a fiction narrative commercial. And so,
We'll post it in the show notes if you want.
yeah, we could. But the point is that it was able to be shot listed. We could shot list it very specifically. We storyboarded it, we tech scouted, we location scouted. Whereas this one it was a remote shoot, not remote, but like it was out of state. We had to travel for it. And it was a live event for a corporate client. And that's very different, right? We could shot list a little bit, but we didn't really know what the location looked like. There was a limit as to equipment we could bring with us versus rent. And with rental equipment always comes like last minute, like figuring stuff out. So this stuff adds to like there being a little less ability to prepare. And so I thought that was a slightly more stressful shoot for me. But I mean, that goes for any shoot, right? But it especially matters, I think, if we're married, that we're highly prepared and that we're both preparing for the role. Because if we're on set and things don't feel prepared and we're getting stressed out, well, with like a professional collaborator, it's really easy to be like, okay, I need to be patient with this person so they can keep performing. But when it's your spouse, that familiarity sometimes breeds contempt, right? And so we are sometimes not as professional with each other. So I think that preparation, I think, is just, it's always been kind of one in my mind since we've had these experiences.
Yeah, definitely. I think preparation's huge. And on that same note, to a degree, I feel like it's important to realize that you don't want to wear too many hats or play too many roles. And parenting is a role. And even being a spouse is a role that you play. And I didn't think of it that way when we made our feature film. But when we were on set, those kids needed, our kids needed help.
Them kids.
Those kids that we found needed help to get their hair done, to learn their lines, to learn what they needed to do. And in between the times that we needed them, while they're on set, they need someone watching them and making sure they're not running off or getting into things or being loud, or
And we thought
that they're getting fed,
yeah, well, we thought that we'd prepared for that. We'd brought someone on just to help watch the kids, but they were going to take the kids offset and kind of help them have like a life, like especially when they weren't needed. But there was no one on set to take care of the kids between takes. It seems obvious, but that, since there were multiple kids, that was multiple people that would have been needed to do that, because you don't want all the kids on set, especially since the youngest at the time was like 1.5, way too young to be on a set. Like they can't be quiet, right? And unless they're in the scene, then it's like put them in there. So when they're not being used, they need to be away, like completely offset.
So you need someone to take care of each child or each location, someone on set with the kids, someone offset with the kids. But I guess that was part of the point, is that the role of, for example, hosting, we filmed it in our own house, the role of making meals for kids, the role of getting them ready for their part, all of those things are roles. And so if you aren't going to assign that job to someone, you need to make sure you're not giving yourself too many jobs. And even as a married couple, we have to be able to say, like, okay, sometimes I step in as your spouse as like a support and a friend, and we can talk through things if you're stressed. And then sometimes we need to be professional and get a job done. And we need to know when to kind of step in and out of those roles. And I think stepping into a professional role was easier to do on some of these other sets. We had other people around us who were all professional collaborators, and I think that helped. It doesn't feel so much like just us trying to make a thing happen. There were a few different reasons why it was easier to be professional, but I think that also made a difference.
Yeah, well, and I think that like sometimes if life is getting so stressful or the movie's getting so stressful, it's like the mom part of you or the wife part of you or the dad part of me or the husband part of me was so stressed that like I needed you to be a spouse or vice versa. And it's like we almost couldn't let each other step into the professional role like enough to get the job done. And I think which added like a burden and a stress to the project. Whereas like for me, there's a lot of mental drama around delegating anything regarding my kids. And so like I was kind of alluding to that before, but like I don't like delegating almost anything. So we homeschool. So that's just one thing that like most people delegate. And I think that's fine. I'm really grateful for public schools existing in our society. But I just, for some reason, have always felt like I wanted to play a very central role in that and in the education of my children specifically.
Well, and it does let us be more flexible. It's something that helps.
As
still.
filmmakers,
Yeah.
it has actually been a really big blessing.
We can travel, we can take days off whenever we need to. So that's been strategic for us as well.
Yeah, but even still, it's also a burden in some ways, obviously. And so,
Yeah, it's definitely time commitment, but it also in some ways helps me feel like almost more justified in the times when we do hire out caretaking, because I get to spend so much time with my kids, so much more than the average parent, that it feels balanced to
Yeah.
me.
And I spend much more time than the average dad because we swap days. So these are all systems that we've developed for ourselves and our families. But my point is that just mentally, I think there's a block there where it's very hard for me to, like you said, justify in my own mind, like not feel like a bad dad. And once again, I mean, I've seen people who they do childcare daily with kids younger than ours. And you know what? They're making it work in a way that they seem to have a very strong relationship with these young children as parents, and I don't know how they do it, but that's because it's their system, that's their life, that's their relationships, and I think some people can make that work, and I think I've had to open that up in my own mind to accept that. But I guess my point here is what I really realized on the feature film is that it's way more responsible to delegate the care of those children than to try and bring them with me everywhere when I am absolutely not capable of giving them the attention and the love that they need.
Mm-hmm.
Because set was not a good parenting environment. It was not a good child environment. It was not a good place for our kids at the time. And it might have been if there'd been more people helping, if there'd been, I don't know, just more preparation for that to occur. But we just didn't know. We didn't know, and we didn't account for all of those things. And so I've learned that there's really a time and a place for me to show up as the best parent that I can be. And when I need to provide, I can make sure that my children are taken care of in a way that's best for that situation. And I think giving myself that latitude and kind of waking up to that, like, and getting rid of the black and white sort of, I don't know, judgment, like self-judgment around that particular issue has been a challenge for me, but I think it's been good because I've definitely felt better about the experience my children are having when I've not been with them. I'm working and they're having a great time with friends and getting the education they need while I'm gone than when I was like trying to pull them in on set. No homeschool happened for weeks while we were working on that feature. Like nothing happened. It was no education, not a lot of good examples from mom and dad. We were too stressed and not at our best. And so, yeah.
I think this is definitely something that women face probably more often than men.
Yeah. And I think I face it more than most men because of my central role.
Yeah.
Because I have so much more time with them on like a daily, like morning through afternoon basis.
Yeah.
Every other day than most dads. And there's a lot of stay-at-home dads now.
Well, and there are a lot of other things too. I've thought about how pregnancy like can completely take over your life in a way where when I'm first pregnant, I get very sick and it's really hard for me to get any good work done because I'm so nauseated. Or even acting. There's a lot of acting roles that I can't do if I'm pregnant. And after a baby's born,
her name's Gal Gadot.
It can happen, look, but it's rare and it's kind of tricky to navigate. So even after having a newborn baby, those newborn babies are very dependent on
shut things down for a while
on mom. And I've done productions still where I've traveled and I'm pumping milk to feed the babies when I get back, and it's a tricky thing to balance. It can be done, but add that on top of the usual mom guilt or feeling like you should be there. I think it's really good to realize that, at least for me, this helps. I'm not always the best person to watch my kids. And I think it's my job to make sure that they are taken care of, their needs are met, they're in good hands of people I trust and completely believe in. But it's not always me, and I'm not always better than someone else. And it's like, I've been humbled enough times to think, who am I to say that I'm a better parent or that I will do a better job taking care of this child just because I gave birth to this child? And in some ways, I am, because I know them and I love them deeper than most people.
I think in the long term, like there's a part of us, right, as parents, that we are the best person, or rather, I don't know. It's hard to define. There's exceptions to all of these things, right? I mean, we just did foster care, and we know that there's sometimes hard situations where these relationships, as important as they are, aren't the safest place for children. And that's not, I think, the place where most of us are at, right? And if most of us aren't, if there's something happening with like drug addiction, or if the home just isn't safe, or there's abuse, then that can sometimes necessitate it. But even in those circumstances, no matter what, something we've learned through the foster system is that no matter how bad it is or how dangerous an environment it is for a child, no matter how good or safe the new environment is for a child, particularly a child in the foster care system, they're going to want to go back to their birth parents. Like they want to go back, and there's trauma involved with that separation. And so part of me does say, yes, we want to be the best parents we can because we are the best people to take care of those children. But then there are some circumstances where we're not. I'm not disagreeing.
Yeah, no,
just
I
think that
agree.
it's our job to judge when those moments are.
It's a complex issue, and it is our responsibility by bringing the children into the world and accepting that responsibility to take care of them, to make sure that we're giving them the best care that they can, whether that's like I'm actually giving the care myself or I'm hiring someone else to do it. But I definitely feel like me, when I'm on set and distracted, is not going to be a better mom than someone who I'm paying, who wants to do this, who loves watching kids. There's great people out there who can help out. And it takes a village. It really does, to raise a child right. And I think it's been really healthy for our kids to have that experience of seeing someone else's home and getting to have a play date. But again, it's just one day a week. And it's not like we come home and, wow, you've grown up and I haven't seen you forever. It's like, oh, how was your play date? Did you have a fun day? And we'll
Yeah.
hang out all week and then we'll do another one. And so I think, I didn't mean for this episode to be so much about
Childcare.
parenting and childcare, but it definitely is a topic that we're thoughtful about.
For us, it was huge, and it had a huge effect on us working on set together.
Yeah.
It was massive, and that's something we've just had to figure out. And
Even the preparation you were talking about, I think, is huge. Preparing someone to watch your children is a lot of work, because children
part of
have
pre-pro.
routines and they have their schedule, they have when they need to nap and when they go to bed and what the discipline methods are and what they eat, and all of those things have to be prepared and communicated and figured out in advance. And if they aren't, it's very hard to step out of that role and focus on something else, because even on our feature film that was kind of disastrous, when I wasn't on set, I was still texting the caretaker and trying to figure out where things were, where their clothes are, what they like to eat, what to do about something that they were running into. And that was also something that I had not prepared. And this next time around, I was very carefully working together with the caretaker to prepare the schedule and the routine and make sure she had all the supplies she needed and was good to go. So I
and
didn't.
had a house to herself
Yeah.
where we were not shooting.
Very essential. And so I think that preparation for that role was also vital.
So I think what's interesting is I want to bring up something that Jody Moore, who is Anna's life coach, who's really amazing, and she's also become Anna's business coach. She said something at a live event that we attended recently, and she said, talking about dreams and how they're different from goals, is that a dream is something that's basically impossible. And when we really decide to hold on to a dream, it needs to sound crazy. It usually makes us very scared. And when we start towards it, we have to be extremely bad at it. Like we don't even know what to do. And if we do know what to do, we know that we don't know how to do it. And so she talked about to a lot of people who are starting businesses who might need to learn how to do a webinar. And she basically said, do a webinar. How you learn how to do webinars, make a bad webinar. And do 25 bad webinars. And the woman said, well, a webinar is harder than a podcast because you have to wear makeup. And she said, no, you don't. do 25 bad webinars and then put lip gloss on or something on the 26th. And so it's this like, we get good at things by being bad at them. And Alexander McKendrick said the same thing about filmmaking. He said one of the biggest things that students struggle with is that they're just not doing a high enough volume of work. And they need to get used to doing the work so that once the work can become second nature, then they can become creatively minded on these projects. And so for us, I think the dream was, okay, we're going to be married, we're going to have kids, we're actually going to be like a happy family, and we're going to make movies together. And we just didn't even, part of it was just we were too
stubborn,
too ignorant, stubborn, dreamy eyed. I don't know what it was, but we were just like, of course that'll work out great. And you're going to be a full-time mom and you're going to work and make movies with me. I don't understand. And we're going to homeschool. It was like, it didn't make any sense, like all this stuff. And yet we are kind of doing it. basically we've just walked into it, and we were bad at it for several years. And I think after nearly 8 years of marriage, in the last 2 years, we've made huge strides towards figuring it out. And we're not perfect at it, but we're getting a lot better at it. And I think we're just learning how to, like, the work is not the problem as much anymore, and the familial logistics are not the problem. It's just now we're able to shift our mind towards the creative. And I think that's something we can accept that without drama. We can just say, yeah, like, this is going to take quite a number of years to figure out, and it might be hard, and we might make some big mistakes. We might have to make a lot of apologies to each other and to our kids and to the rest of the crew and to other people, and that's okay. Like, I don't know. I'm starting to really accept the fact that that learning process cost what it cost, and we didn't know what we didn't know, and we did know what we didn't know in some cases, and we just had to learn, and we had to be bad at it, and boy, were we bad at it. And yet I think we're creating something, not just the movie, although I do think the movie's really great. It's coming together in a way that I'm excited about, the one that was really hard. But when I say we're making something, I'm referring to the family and the life of being married filmmakers that actually can work together on projects. Not every single project, but when it makes sense, we work together, and it's really exciting and fun. And I think especially with the features, we're going to keep working together, and that's starting to become almost obvious logistically. Like, listening to this podcast, we haven't shared anything that's like super mind-blowing secrets or anything. It's just stuff we didn't know. It's just stuff we didn't think about. And that's how it'll be for you. It'll be a mystery. It'll be a big, scary dream. And then once you figure it out, you're going to look back and go, well, that's all it was. We just had to, like, get a babysitter, I guess.
Why didn't we figure that out before?
And so, yeah.
Yeah, it's that simplicity on the other side of complexity, where things all seem simple until you try to do them, and then it gets complex. And then through all that complexity, if you can stick with it through the complexity and the chaos long enough, it becomes simple again, and you find that way that works for you. And we've shared some of the things that have worked for us, but you'll have to find what works for you and for your family, and it might be totally different. But just believing that it is possible and moving through being bad at it, staying with it long enough. I think that's why that we'll post in the show notes was such a great experience for us, was because it helped us realize that it was possible, and that we were actually living something we dreamed of long ago and didn't think was possible and thought we failed at. It was kind of coming together and starting to work. And so our production company is called Invisible Mansion. And there's lots of things that means. But for me, it also, one thing that it means is your inner life. You live inside of your life and inside of your experience of your life. And no one sees that except for you. And in a Hollywood studio lot, there might be like fronts where there's a whole street. If you've ever gone and toured, where is it? Universal Studios or whatever, they take you out and there's a whole street of storefronts, but they're all false. Like, it looks very real, but then behind it, it's just a wall. There's nothing back there. And a lot of people, I think, in our industry may have that. You may be living that, where you feel like it looks good to everyone on the outside, but I'm the one inside of it, living it, and I feel empty. And I feel like I'm not doing all the things I want to do. And it looks good, but isn't. And then some of you might be like we were, trying to build this mansion, all of these things we wanted, family and film and working together and being married and having kids and homeschooling and all of these things. We're laying this foundation, and it's huge.
And it takes
to include all the walls. We're going around in circles, laying bricks and not seeing much progress. And it looks bad. From the outside, it doesn't look impressive. And it's going to rain and you're going to get wet, and it's going to feel like, man, I wish I could have something that looked as nice as what everyone else just threw up really quickly. And yet you get to a point where you've built something really sturdy and that includes and has room for everything that you want to be part of your life. And I think it was just one of those moments where if you've ever built a house, you like kind of walk in and you're like, wow, this is actually like starting to look like a house. Like, I can't really live in it yet. It's not the dream yet, but I'm seeing it be realized in front of my eyes.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I can see without as much stretch of the imagination that it's getting real, you know. And that's something that like we're just delaying for ourselves by putting up false facades. We are a false facade gets the job done for as long as it gets the job done, but behind it, things start falling apart. And I think that's why in this and many other industries, especially in Hollywood, where the expectation is like hop from set to set, work 14-hour days. And I mean, it's getting better. I think there are some systemic changes that need to be happening in our industry, but even if those systemic changes never happen, what Anna and I truly believe is that we can make personal and familial changes that make it possible for us to do the things that we dream of without waiting on the world to change, as John Mayer unwisely suggests that we all do. So I like John Mayer's music. So sorry.
he will be great music.
And so that's encouraging for me, and I hope it's encouraging for others who might have some aspect of their dream, whether it's similar to ours or completely different. Things especially feel impossible when it feels like no one else in the world is doing it the way you want to do it. And we definitely felt that way, thinking, yeah, we're going to have kids right away, and we're going to get married young, and we're going to go straight into film. We're going to both be in film, and we're going to homeschool, and yada, 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 et cetera, et cetera. It's like, it just was like this picture that it was like, everyone goes, that's not how people do it, right? It's like, it just feels so different. And your picture is going to feel that way. I mean, if you're really being true to yourself and you're putting the dream together, it's going to be unique in some way. It's going to go, no one else, I've never seen anyone to do it quite like this, but that's kind of exciting. You can pave that way for other people and just be brave enough to be different and be okay with being really bad at it. And then you'll figure it out. It'll come together with time. So yeah.
Yeah. One other thing that I would just throw in there is I think it's important to not wait to try to do all the things, to move forward with all of the things.
I think it's important to start as early as possible.
Start as early as you can, because if you're laying a foundation, you want to lay it all the way around all of the things that you want to have in your house, right? You don't want to just lay the foundation in one area and build that one area. That's the false facade we were talking about. And I think I see a lot of people approaching balance like, I'm just going to lean really hard into the career, and then I'm going to lean completely into family, and then I'm going to go back into the career. And it's like this balancing act where you're switching from one end of the scale to the other and trying to
giving yourself whiplash.
Yeah, like call that balance. Balance is not one side slamming to the ground while the other one shoots up, and then the other side slamming to the ground while the other one shoots up. Balance is both, maintaining both at the same time. And so whatever those dreams are for you, I think make sure that you're working towards them, and all of them, even if it's just 10 minutes a day, even if it's just once a week, whatever it is. And on that note, we have an offer now. We offer 3 free green light calls every week within our program, which is just to add on to that checklist. We feel like a lot of people download the checklist, love the checklist, and
if you're not
don't do anything on it.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with the free checklist, it's a make your first feature film checklist that goes through all the way from ideation and development all the way through distribution and sales.
And
every single step that we can think of in that filmmaking process, and that's free. And if you don't already have that, then we can put that in the show notes.
Yeah, that's always in the show notes, so you can download that if you don't have it already. And if you do, but you haven't been using it very regularly, we highly encourage you to take advantage of the green light call. And I think some people wait because they think, I don't know, like maybe once I've written the script, then I'm ready to move forward and do this green light call where we'll help you make a plan to make your feature film.
Because we have resources on there to help you like push that script forward. It's like
we have resources that will help you through all the stages. So wherever you're at, even if it's just, I'm kind of thinking about this idea, definitely take advantage of that. It's a way that we like to give back, is opening up those 3 calls a week. So jump on and grab them before they fill up. And we'd love to help you get started on making this dream a reality and something that is becoming real for you in your life.
Absolutely. Well, we hope you really enjoyed this episode. We've really enjoyed recording it and talking about it. Thanks, Anna, for pushing me around in my brain with some good questions and such. And so, yeah, it's always good to remember what we've learned. And we hope that it's been helpful And we are excited to see, as you guys take the checklist and the green light call, to see how you guys start taking steps to making your own dreams realities and doing what seems impossible.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thanks for joining us today. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, you'll love the Feature Filmmaker Academy, a program designed to teach anyone how to finance and finish a feature film.
There are many resources teaching you how to do a great job, but what they don't teach you is how to get the job in the first place.
You cannot have a career making feature films until you've made at least one. Anyone can make a feature film using our proven model.
It's risk-free. If you follow all the steps in the program, you'll finance and finish a feature film, or we'll give you your money back.
Learn more at invisiblemansion.com/feature filmmaker or click the link in the show notes.
If you find this free resource valuable, we'd really appreciate it if you leave us a review or share it with another filmmaker.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.